General stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Endless Conquest, and looked at the stars through the massive viewing window. Behind him, 600 warships of the Dominion Empire moved in perfect formation. They were the most powerful fleet ever assembled by the species and was proud to command them. For 200 years, they had conquered world after world. 400 planets now served the Dominion. Their people worked in mines, grew food for tables, and built ships for fleets. The Dominion was unstoppable. Every species they met either surrendered or died. There was no third option. Today, they would add planet number 401 to their empire, a small blue world called Earth. Lieutenant walked up to the general and bowed her head in respect. She was young for her rank but smart and loyal, trusted her more than most of his officers. "General, the intelligence report on the target world is ready," she said. Nodded and turned to face the holographic display that appeared in the center of the bridge. The blue planet rotated slowly in the air, covered in water and green land. It looked peaceful. It looked weak. "Show me what we know," commanded. The display changed to show information about Earth and its people. Read the details with growing amusement. The humans had only reached their own moon. Their fastest ships would take years to reach the nearest star. They had nuclear weapons, but these were primitive compared to technology. Most amusing of all, the humans spent most of their time and resources fighting each other. "They have over 200 separate nations," the intelligence officer reported. "They cannot agree on anything. They fight wars over land, resources, and ideas. They have been killing each other since they first learned to make weapons." Laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that made his officers uncomfortable. The general rarely showed emotion. "A species that cannot even unite their own world," said. "This will be the easiest conquest in Dominion history. We will be home before the next cycle." Lieutenant stepped forward. She looked nervous, which was unusual for her. "General, there is one small concern," she said carefully. "Our long-range sensors have detected unusual electromagnetic signatures from the planet's surface. We cannot identify them. They do not match any technology in our records." Waved his hand dismissively. "Every world has its secrets, Lieutenant. They had their crystal towers. They had their biological weapons. None of it mattered when our ships filled their skis. These humans will be no different." Bowed again and returned to her station. She was not fully satisfied, but she knew better than to argue with the general. Had never lost a battle. He had never even come close to losing. His confidence was earned through centuries of victory. The fleet continued its journey toward the Sol system. On Earth, in a military facility in the city of South Korea, Commander Park was having a normal day. He sat at his desk in the Korean Space Command Center, reviewing reports from satellite systems and tracking stations. It was quiet work but important. Had spent 20 years watching the skis, and he took his job seriously. Captain Lee sat at the communications console nearby. She was younger than, but equally dedicated. They had worked together for 5 years and trusted each other completely. At exactly 3:47 in the afternoon, every alarm in the facility went off at once. Jumped from his chair and ran to the main display screen. What he saw made his blood turn cold. 600 objects were entering the solar system. They were moving far faster than any human technology could achieve. They were slowing down as they approached Earth. "Captain Lee, confirm these readings," ordered. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. Worked at her console with desperate speed. She checked the data 3 times, then 4 times. Each check gave the same result. "Confirmed, Commander," she said. 600 objects. They are not natural, they are changing course. They are coming directly toward Earth." Stared at the screen for a long moment. In all his years of service, he had prepared for many threats, enemy missiles, satellite attacks, space debris. He had never prepared for this. No one had. He picked up a phone and made a call to the Minister of Defense. The conversation was short. Within 1 hour, every government on Earth knew the truth. They were not alone in the universe, and whatever was coming did not seem friendly. Emergency meetings began in every capital city. Presidents and prime ministers gathered their advisors. Military commanders reviewed their forces. Scientists argued about what the objects might be. Religious leaders prayed for guidance. The people of Earth did not know what was coming, but they could feel that something was wrong. News channels began reporting strange activity at government buildings. Social media filled with rumors and fear. Commander stayed at his post. He watched the 600 objects grow closer on his screen. Captain sat beside him, monitoring communications from around the world. "What do you think they want?" asked quietly. Shook his head. "I do not know, but they did not bring 600 ships to say hello." He was right. Aboard the Endless Conquest, General prepared his surrender demand. It was the same message that had sent to 400 worlds before Earth: submit peacefully and serve the Dominion, or face complete destruction. The choice was always simple. Most species chose to live as slaves rather than die as free beings. Expected the humans to be the same. They were weak, divided, and primitive. They would see the power of his fleet and fall to their knees. It was the natural order of things. The strong ruled, the weak served. He recorded his message and ordered it broadcast on all frequencies. The humans would receive it within minutes. He gave them one planetary rotation to respond. It was more generous than they deserved. Then General returned to his viewing window and watched the blue planet grow larger. It was beautiful, he admitted to himself. Blue and green and white, floating in the darkness of space. It would make a fine addition to the Dominion. He did not know that he was looking at the last thing he would ever see. He did not know that his fleet, the most powerful force in history, would never return home. He did not know that the humans he considered primitive were about to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. No fleet survives contact with Earth. But General did not know this yet. He stood at his window, confident and proud, and waited for the humans to surrender. They would not. The message from General reached every radio, television, and computer on Earth at the same moment. The alien general's face appeared on billions of screens. He was tall and gray-skinned, with 4 eyes that glowed with cold intelligence. When he spoke, translation software converted his words into every human language. "People of Earth," the message began. "I am General of the Dominion Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You have 2 choices. Surrender peacefully and become a labor species in service to the Dominion. Your people will work, your resources will feed our empire, and you will live. Or refuse and we will destroy your cities, kill your people, and take what we want anyway. You have 1 planetary rotation to decide. Choose wisely." The message ended. Silence fell across the world. For exactly 3 hours, humanity did nothing. Leaders talked, generals planned, citizens panicked. It seemed like the world was frozen in fear. Then something strange happened. It started in Seoul, South Korea, where a young woman named recorded a video on her phone. She looked directly at the camera and spoke in Korean. "My answer is no," she said simply. "I would rather die free than live as a slave, and I think I am not alone." She posted the video online. Within 1 hour, it had been shared 10 million times. More videos appeared, from Tokyo and New York, from Cairo and Moscow, from small villages and big cities. Millions of humans recorded the same message in hundreds of languages. "No, we refuse. Come and try to take our world." Some of the videos included laughter, humans laughing at the alien general and his threats. It was not the laughter of people who did not understand the danger. It was the laughter of people who had decided they were not afraid to die. On the Endless Conquest, General watched these videos with growing confusion. Lieutenant stood beside him, equally puzzled. "They are refusing," said slowly. "All of them, Even the ones with no weapons, no power, no way to fight, they are all refusing. Perhaps they do not understand the situation, suggested. Shook his head. No, they understand. Look at their faces. They know they will die. They simply do not care. He paused for a long moment. It does not matter. Their courage will not stop our weapons. Prepare the first strike. We will show them what happens to those who defy the Dominion. 50 warships broke from the main fleet and began descending toward Earth. Their target was a human naval fleet in the Pacific Ocean, wanted to demonstrate the power of weapons. He wanted the humans to watch their ships burn and change their minds about surrender. The 50 ships entered Earth's atmosphere with shields raised and weapons ready. They were confident. They were wrong. Aboard the South Korean destroyer, the great lieutenant commander stood on the bridge and watched the sky. She could see the alien ships now, breaking through the clouds like falling stars. They were huge, each one larger than any vessel humans had ever built. Their hulls glowed with strange energy. They looked invincible. Was terrified. Her hands trembled as she gripped the railing, but she did not run. She had received her orders and she would follow them. All stations report ready, she said into her radio. Maintain position and transmit targeting data. Her ship was not meant to fight the aliens. It was meant to watch them, to track them, to tell others exactly where they were. The real weapons were somewhere else. During the 12 hours since message, humanity had not been frozen in fear. The videos and the laughter were real, but they were also a distraction. While civilians recorded their defiance, military commanders around the world had been working. Every nuclear submarine had moved to new positions. Every satellite with weapons capability had been. Every secret project that governments had hidden from each other was suddenly shared. American missiles, Russian lasers, Chinese, European drones. Technology that nations had developed in secret was now pointed at the sky. Humanity had spent thousands of years learning to kill each other. They were very good at it. Now they had a new target. The 50 ships descended to 5 kilometers above the ocean. They prepared to fire on the human fleet below. General watched from orbit, waiting to see the pretty explosions. The explosions came, but they were not what he expected. From beneath the ocean, nuclear missiles rose on pillars of fire. From bases around the Pacific, conventional missiles launched by the hundreds. From secret installations in 3 countries, directed energy weapons fired beams of concentrated light at targets they had never been designed to hit. The ships had shields. The shields were strong, but they were designed to stop the weapons of other spacefaring species. They were not designed to stop the focused rage of an entire planet. The first nuclear warhead detonated against a shield, and the shield held. The second warhead hit the same spot, and the shield flickered. The third warhead broke through. The ship died in atomic fire, falling from the sky in burning pieces. More explosions followed. The shields could stop 1 weapon, 2 weapons, even 10 weapons. They could not stop 100 weapons hitting them at once. They could not stop the endless stream of missiles that humanity poured into the sky. Lieutenant Commander watched from her ship as the aliens burned. She counted the falling ships. 10, 20, 30, 40. 43 warships died in the first 3 minutes of combat. The remaining 7 turned and fled back to orbit, trailing smoke and fire. On the endless conquest, General stared at his tactical display. He could not believe what he was seeing. He had expected easy victory. He had received disaster. How, he whispered. How is this possible? They are primitives. They cannot even travel between stars. Lieutenant checked her console with shaking hands. General, their weapons are crude but powerful. They attacked with everything at once. They did not try to win. They tried to hurt us as badly as possible before dying. It is not a strategy I have ever seen before. Said nothing. He continued to stare at the display, watching the 7 surviving ships limp back to the fleet. 43 ships lost. Thousands of soldiers dead. against a species that could not even leave its own solar system. For the first time in his long career, General felt something cold in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. Fear. On Earth, the news spread quickly. Humanity had fought back. Humanity had won. The streets of every city filled with people celebrating, crying, and hugging each other. They knew the war was not over. They knew the aliens would return with greater force. But for one moment, they allowed themselves to hope. Commander Park watched the celebration with tired eyes. Captain Lee stood beside him. "We hurt them," said quietly. "We actually hurt them." Nodded slowly. "Yes, and now they know we can fight. The next attack will not be 50 ships, it will be all of them." He was right. General was already planning his revenge. They would return with their full fleet, and they would burn the Earth from orbit where human weapons could not reach. But humanity was planning too. In secret bunkers and hidden laboratories, scientists and soldiers prepared for the next battle. They knew they could not win a fair fight, so they would not fight fair. They would fight like humans. General stood before the holographic display and studied the blue planet below. His 4 eyes burned with cold anger. 43 ships, thousands of soldiers, lost to primitives who could not even travel between stars. The shame of it would follow him for the rest of his life. But shame could wait. First, there would be revenge. "We will not descend again," announced to his officers. "We will stay in orbit beyond the range of their weapons. We will burn their cities from above. We will turn their world to glass and ash. When we are finished, there will be nothing left but silence." Lieutenant spoke carefully. "General, High Command has asked about the resource value of the planet, if we destroy everything." "I do not care about resources," interrupted. His voice was ice. "These creatures embarrassed the Dominion. They killed our soldiers. They laughed at us. There will be no slaves taken from this world. There will be no survivors. Earth will become a warning to every species in the galaxy. This is what happens when you resist the..." The remaining 500 warships moved into bombardment positions around Earth. Their weapons powered up, glowing with deadly energy. From orbit, they could strike any point on the planet. Human missiles could not reach them. Human planes could not fly high enough. There was nothing the people of Earth could do but wait to die. Or so General believed. Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, in a facility that did not officially exist, Doctor worked without rest. She had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red and her hands trembled from too much coffee, but she could not stop, would not stop. The fate of her species depended on her work. Was a physicist. She had spent 15 years studying gravity and how to manipulate it. Her research was meant to create clean energy, a new power source that would end humanity's dependence on fossil fuels. It was meant to save the world. Now it would save the world in a different way. "The gravity anchors are ready," she reported to the military commander beside her. "But I must be honest with you. This technology was never meant to be a weapon. It was never tested at this scale. I do not know exactly what will happen when we activate it." The commander was a stern woman named General O. She had commanded troops in 3 wars and never showed fear. But today, even she looked worried. "What do you think will happen?" General O asked. Took a deep breath. "If the anchors are attached to the alien ships and we activate the gravity pulse, it should create localized gravitational collapse. The ships will experience different gravity forces in different areas. They will be pulled apart from the inside. And if it does not work, then we die," said simply. "But we were going to die anyway. At least this way we have a chance." General O nodded. "Then we take the chance. What do you need?" "I need someone to attach the anchors to the alien ships. Someone who can fly into space and get close enough to plant them on the hulls. It will be a suicide mission. Whoever goes up there will not come back." The general was quiet for a moment. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. In a military airbase 200 kilometers away, Captain received his orders. He was a pilot, one of the best in the Korean Air Force. He flew an experimental stealth fighter that was never meant to leave the atmosphere. Today, it would. Gathered his squadron in the briefing room. There were 20 pilots, men and women who had trained together for years. They were family. "I will not lie to you," said. "This mission has no return flight. We will fly into space, past the alien defenses and attach devices to their ships. We will probably die, but if we succeed, we give Earth a chance to fight back." He looked at each face in the room. No one spoke, no one left. "I need volunteers only," continued. "Anyone who wants to stay behind, I understand. There is no shame in wanting to live." Pilot stepped forward. She was the youngest in the squadron, only 24 years old. "Captain, we all volunteered when we became pilots. We knew we might die for our country. Today, we die for our world. I am ready." One by one, every pilot stepped forward. 20 pilots, 20 ships, 20 people who knew they would not see another sunrise. The bombardment began at sunset. Weapons fell from orbit like rain of fire. Was the first city to die. 10 million people lived there. In seconds, there was nothing but a crater of melted glass and burning ash. Cairo fell next, then Mumbai, then Los Angeles. Around the world, people fled to underground shelters. Not everyone could be saved. The bunkers were too small, the time too short. Billions were left above ground, watching the sky, waiting for death. But even as cities burned, the human counterattack launched. Squadron rose from the airbase in total darkness, their stealth systems hiding them from alien sensors. They flew higher than any human aircraft had ever flown. Their engines screamed. Their bodies pressed against their seats. The atmosphere grew thin, then vanished completely. They were in space. The alien fleet filled the sky ahead of them. Hundreds of massive warships, each one larger than an aircraft carrier. Energy weapons flashed as they continued to bombard the planet below. The sight was terrifying. "Remember the mission," said over the radio. "Get close, plant the anchor, get out if you can. It has been an honor to fly with you all." The squadron scattered, each pilot choosing a different target. They detected them almost immediately. Alien fighters launched to intercept. Energy beams cut through the darkness of space. Pilot dodged and weaved through enemy fire. Her hands moved automatically, years of training taking over. An alien fighter appeared in front of her. She destroyed it with a missile and kept flying. She reached her target, a massive warship with strange symbols on its hull. She flew along its surface, looking for a place to attach her anchor. There, a gap in the armor near an engine port. She released the anchor. It attached to the hull with magnetic clamps, one down. "Anchor planted," she reported, returning to. An energy beam hit her ship. Alarm screamed. Fire filled the cockpit. Felt pain, then nothing. One by one, the pilots of Squadron died. But before they died, they planted their anchors. 18 devices attached to 18 different ships, scattered throughout the alien fleet. Captain was the last one alive. His ship was damaged, trailing smoke and leaking air. He could see Earth below him, burning in 100 places. He could see the alien fleet above him, still firing. He had one anchor left. With his last strength, he flew toward the largest ship in the fleet, the flagship, the Endless Conquest. He planted his anchor on its hull, right above what looked like the command bridge. Then his ship exploded, and Captain joined his squadron in death. In the bunker beneath the Korean mountains, Doctor watched the status display. 18 anchors active. It was not as many as she had hoped, but it would have to be enough. "The pilots completed their mission," General O said quietly. "They are all gone." Closed her eyes for a moment. 20 young people, dead because of her invention. She would carry their names in her heart forever. Then she opened her eyes and looked at her console. "It is time," she said. "Tell everyone to hold on to something. I do not know how strong the effect will be." She entered the activation code and pressed the final button. And aboard 500 alien warships, gravity itself became a weapon. The gravity pulse spread through space at the speed of light. It was invisible, silent, and absolutely deadly. When it reached the first anchor, attached to a destroyer 300 kilometers above the Pacific Ocean, the effect was immediate and terrible. Gravity inside the ship went insane. The floor became the ceiling. The ceiling became a wall. Different sections of the ship experienced different gravitational forces at the same time. Soldiers who were standing suddenly found themselves flying sideways. Equipment that was bolted down ripped free and became deadly projectiles. The metal hull groaned, then screamed, then tore itself apart. The destroyer died in less than 10 seconds. Its crew never had time to understand what was happening. The pulse reached the second anchor, the third, the fourth. 18 ships had anchors attached directly to their hulls. All 18 died instantly, their structures collapsing like paper crushed by an invisible hand. But the effect did not stop there. Doctor had designed the anchors to work together, to amplify each other's effect. The pulse that killed 18 ships directly spread outward and touched every vessel in the fleet. The effect was weaker at a distance, but still powerful enough to cause chaos. On the endless conquest, General was thrown from his feet as the floor suddenly tilted 30 degrees. Officers tumbled across the bridge. Consoles sparked and exploded. Emergency alarms filled the air with screaming sound. "What is happening?" roared, pulling himself up by gripping a support column. "Report." Lieutenant was bleeding from a cut on her head, but she managed to reach her console. What she saw made her face go pale. 300 ships destroyed, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. 200 more heavily damaged. Gravity readings are impossible, sir. Something is attacking us through gravity itself. Stared at the tactical display. It was covered in red markers. Ships dying. Ships damaged. Ships out of control. His fleet, the most powerful force in Dominion history, was being torn apart by invisible hands. He screamed. It was not a word, not a command, not even anger. It was a raw animal sound of pure rage and frustration. This could not be happening. This was not possible. The humans were primitives. They could not do this. They could not. But they had. On Earth, in the bunker beneath the mountains, watched the results of her weapon with mixed emotions. Joy because it was working. Horror because she was killing thousands of living beings. Pride because humanity was fighting back. Shame because this was not how she had wanted to use her invention. Sergeant Hand stood guard at the entrance to the control room. He was 32 years old, a career soldier who had fought in border conflicts and peacekeeping missions. He had never expected to fight aliens, but here he was. "How long until they figure out where we are?" he asked. Checked her readings. The weapon creates a specific energy signature. If they are smart, and they seem to be, they will trace it to this location. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. Nodded calmly. "Then we have 5 minutes to do as much damage as possible. Keep firing, Doctor. My squad will hold the entrance." He walked out of the control room and gathered his 12 soldiers. They were young, most of them in their early 20s. They had never fought in a real war. Today, they would fight in humanity's last stand. "We hold this position," told them. "No matter what comes through that tunnel, we do not let it reach the control room. The doctor needs time to finish her work. We give her that time." A young private named Shin raised his hand. "Sergeant, what if the aliens do not come through the tunnel? What if they just bomb us from orbit?" Smiled grimly. "Then we die quickly instead of slowly. Either way, we do our job." In orbit, General forced himself to think clearly. The rage was still there, burning in his chest, but he pushed it down. Rage would not save his fleet. Only action would. "Find the source of the attack," he commanded. "Trace the energy signature. Destroy whatever is generating it." His officers worked desperately at their damaged consoles. The ship shuddered as another gravity pulse hit it. The anchors were still active, still broadcasting their deadly signal. More ships died every minute. "Found it," an officer shouted. "The signal originates from a mountain range on the eastern continent. Coordinates locked." "All ships that can still fire target those coordinates," ordered. "Everything we have. I want nothing left but a hole in the ground." 120 ships were still capable of firing their main weapons. They turned toward the mountain range in Korea and prepared to unleash destruction. In the bunker, alarms began to scream. "They found us," said quietly. She looked at her console. The weapon was still firing, still destroying alien ships, but she could see the incoming attack on her sensors. Over 100 ships were targeting her position. There was no defense against that much firepower. General O stepped forward. "Doctor, you should evacuate. Use the emergency tunnel. You might survive." Shook her head. "The weapon requires constant adjustment. If I leave, the anchors will lose their synchronization. The effect will fade. The aliens will recover." She looked at the general with calm, tired eyes. "Someone has to stay." "Then I will stay with you," General O said. No, his voice was firm. "You are needed to lead whatever comes after. Someone has to rebuild. Someone has to remember. That has to be you." The general wanted to argue, but she knew was right. She clasped the doctor's hand for a moment, then turned and walked toward the evacuation tunnel. She did not look back. She could not. Sergeant entered the control room one last time. He had heard everything. "My squad will hold position until the end," he said. "But honestly, if they are bombing from orbit, there is not much we can do." Looked at him. She saw a man who knew he was going to die and had accepted it. She saw courage that she wished she possessed. "What is your name?" she asked. "Han." "I am. It is nice to meet you, Sergeant Han." He smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine despite everything. "It is nice to meet you too, Doctor. I wish we had more time." "So do I." The bunker shook as the first orbital strikes hit the mountain above them. Rock cracked. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered but stayed on. Turned back to her console and continued her work. The anchors were still active. The weapon was still firing. Every second she kept working was another second of damage to the alien fleet. Returned to his squad. They could hear the bombardment growing louder, closer. The tunnel entrance began to crack. "Hold steady," told his soldiers. "We are the last line, we make it count." The ceiling collapsed first, then the walls, then everything. In her final moment, Doctor kept her hands on the controls. She did not try to run. She did not try to hide. She stayed at her post, doing her job until the fire took her. But in that final moment, she did one last thing. She pushed the weapon to maximum output, beyond all safety limits, beyond anything it was designed to do. The gravity pulse that followed was the strongest yet. Aboard the Endless Conquest, the effect was catastrophic. The flagship twisted like a toy in the hands of an angry child. Bulkheads buckled. Engines exploded. The command bridge cracked open, exposing it to the vacuum of space. General was thrown against the viewing window. The glass cracked but did not break. He hung there, looking down at the blue planet that had destroyed everything he had built. "How," he whispered, "how did primitives defeat us?" And in that final moment, he understood. The humans were not primitives. They were young. They had been fighting each other for thousands of years because they had no other enemy worth fighting. Every war, every weapon, every strategy they had ever developed was practice. Preparation for a threat they did not even know existed. They had conquered 400 worlds because those worlds had given up. They had surrendered when they saw the power of the Dominion fleet. They had chosen slavery over death. The humans had made a different choice. They had chosen to fight, to die, to take as many enemies with them as possible. And they had won. The viewing window finally shattered. General was pulled into space and the cold vacuum claimed him. His last sight was Earth, still blue, still green, still burning but still alive. The endless conquest broke apart around him. And far below, in the ruins of the mountain bunker, a small flame flickered and died. Doctor and Sergeant Han were gone. But their work was done. The final gravity pulse swept through the fleet like a wave of death. Ships that were already damaged fell apart completely. Ships that had survived the earlier attacks now died in the final surge. The pulse was so strong that it affected vessels that had no anchors attached at all, twisting their hulls and destroying their engines. When the pulse finally faded, the silence that followed was absolute. Of 600 warships, only 17 remained. They floated in orbit around Earth, damaged and broken, their crews dead or dying. The greatest fleet in Dominion history had been reduced to wreckage. Lieutenant was alive. She did not know how. She had been near an emergency pod when the final pulse hit, and she had managed to climb inside before the bridge was destroyed. Now she floated in darkness, her small pod tumbling slowly through the debris field. Through the small window she could see the remains of the endless conquest. The flagship was in pieces, its great hull torn apart like paper. General was somewhere in that debris, along with thousands of other soldiers. They had come to conquer a world. They had found their graves instead. Activated her communication system and broadcast on the emergency frequency. This is Lieutenant of the Endless Conquest. Any surviving vessels respond. Static, then slowly voices began to answer. 17 ships, that was all that remained. 17 ships out of 600. She was now the highest-ranking survivor. The fleet, what remained of it, was hers to command. All vessels, this is Lieutenant assuming command, she said. Her voice was steady, but inside she was shaking. Set course for the nearest jump point. We are leaving this system. Lieutenant, what about the planet? Someone asked. We could still. Could still what? Interrupted. Attack them with 17 damaged ships. They destroyed 500 of our vessels. They killed General and every officer above me. They hit us with a weapon we cannot understand, cannot counter, and cannot survive. She paused, looking out at the blue planet below. It was still burning in places, scars from the bombardment visible from orbit, but it was still there, still alive. We are leaving, now. The 17 survivors turned and limped toward the edge of the solar system. They did not look back. On Earth, the people emerged from their bunkers. The sky was dark with smoke. Cities lay in ruins. Hundreds of millions were dead. The cost of victory was almost too terrible to comprehend, but victory it was. Commander Park stood in the wreckage of Korean Space Command. The building had collapsed during the bombardment, but some sections had survived. He and Captain Lee had lived through the attack in a basement shelter. Now they stood outside, looking up at the sky. They could see the debris field in orbit, pieces of alien ships catching the sunlight as they tumbled through space. They could see the 17 survivors fleeing toward the outer system. They are running, said. There was wonder in her voice, disbelief, joy. We won, we actually won. Nodded slowly. He was too tired to feel joy, too aware of the cost, but yes, they had won. What happens now? Asked. We rebuild, said. We bury our dead, we learn from what happened. He pointed at the debris field. And we study every piece of alien technology we can recover, because they will come back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but someday they will return. He turned to face her, his eyes hard with determination. And when they do, we will be ready. In a small apartment building that had somehow survived the bombardment, a young woman named sat with her family. Her grandmother, her parents, her younger brother. They had all survived by hiding in the basement. Was the one who had posted the first video refusing to surrender. She had not expected to survive to see the result. What do we do now? Her brother asked. He was 16, still young enough to believe that adults had answers. looked at her family. She looked at the damaged walls, the broken windows, the smoke-filled sky outside. She thought about all the people who had died and all the people who had fought to save those who lived. "We remember," she said finally. "We remember everyone who died, the pilots who flew into space knowing they would not come back, the soldiers who held their positions until the end, the scientists who stayed at their posts when they could have run." She paused, her eyes filling with tears. "We remember them, and we make sure their sacrifice was worth it." Her grandmother reached over and took her hand. The old woman had lived through wars before, had seen her country destroyed and rebuilt. She knew that humans were survivors. "We will remember," she agreed, "and we will grow stronger." Lieutenant's report to Dominion High Command was brief and devastating. She recommended that the Sol system be classified as forbidden space. All navigation charts should be erased. All records of Earth's location should be destroyed. No ship should ever return. The Dominion Council did not believe her at first. How could primitives destroy the greatest fleet in their history? It was impossible. It was shameful. It could not be true. But the evidence was undeniable. 17 survivors out of 600, general dead. The endless conquest destroyed. A weapon that attacked through gravity itself, something no scientist could explain or counter. The Council voted unanimously to accept recommendation. Sol's system was erased from every chart. Earth was forgotten. They would never speak of this defeat again. But other species had been watching. Subject worlds under Dominion control had seen the fleet depart. They had waited for news of another easy conquest. Instead, they heard whispers of disaster. They could be beaten. The Great Dominion was not invincible. A single world had destroyed 500 warships. Within a year, the first rebellions began. Within 10 years, the Dominion was fractured. Within 50 years, it no longer existed at all. And in all that time, the story of Earth spread from world to world, species to species. It became legend, a warning, a promise. Do not attack the humans. Do not threaten their world. Do not underestimate their will to survive, because no fleet survives contact with Earth. 50 years after the battle, in a grand hall in Seoul, a statue was unveiled. It showed two figures standing side by side. Doctor, the physicist who had turned gravity into a weapon. Sergeant Han, the soldier who had held the line until the end. They stood together in bronze, looking up at the sky they had died to protect. At the base of the statue, an inscription was carved in 100 languages. They held the line. Captain Lee was there for the ceremony. She was old now, her hair white and her face lined with age, but her eyes were still sharp and her memory was clear. Beside her stood a young officer named. He was the son of the woman who had posted the first video of defiance. He had grown up hearing stories of the war, of the heroes who had saved humanity. "Do you think they will ever come back?" he asked. "The aliens." Smiled. It was a hard smile, a warrior's smile. "Perhaps, but if they do, they will find something different waiting for them." She pointed up at the sky. Above Earth, a fleet of human warships orbited in perfect formation. They were built from recovered alien technology, faster and more powerful than anything humans had ever created before. They were crewed by men and women who had trained their entire lives for war. "Last time they came to us," said. "Next time we go to them." Nodded, he understood. Humanity had learned a lesson from the invasion. They had learned that the universe was dangerous, that there were powers out there who saw them as resources to be exploited. They had learned that survival meant strength. And humanity had always been very good at getting stronger. In the deepest archives of 100 alien civilizations, the warning was passed from generation to generation. Do not enter the Sol system. Do not threaten the blue planet called Earth. Do not test the species called humanity. Because no fleet survives contact with Earth. And somewhere in the stars, The survivors of the Dominion still remembered the day their empire began to fall. They remembered General's final scream. They remembered the impossible weapon that tore their ships apart. They remembered the primitives who refused to surrender, who refused to die, who refused to accept that they could not win. They remembered, and they taught their children to remember. Never go to Earth. Never